Hey everybody, IzzyCraze365 here, and today I just wanted to go over Sentinels of the Multiverse, the video game, and just show you real quick how to get the five Freedom 5 variants. So, these are the newest variants that have been available. I'm probably hitting this video a little bit late, but I found a really easy way to get all of the variants for the Freedom 5, and I just wanted to share that with everybody. So first thing you need to do is New Game. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Freedom 5 variants, they're a little bit complicated to get. As with all the variants of the heroes, you need to do a certain set of achievements or conditions and unlock them. And the reason why the Freedom 5 are a little bit complicated is because there's a lot of prep work that goes into them. So first off, you need to do the Prerequisite Games. Now, unlike other variants, the Freedom 5 actually have several prerequisite games that you need to do. So first thing you need to do is you need to play Progeny, and Progeny is going to be the villain throughout the entirety of this unlocking process, and it follows the story of the Sentinels of the Multiverse that the creators have made. So effectively, Progeny, he's kind of like the Silver Surfer. He's coming down to the world to make it ready for Oblivion to show up. And as it says right there, Progeny, he is the vassal of destruction. And on his other side, he is a cosmic annihilator. He is actually a pretty complicated villain to beat, difficulty 4 here. However, we're going to use his own nature and the environment to our advantage. So, first off, prerequisite games. First thing you need to do is Progeny as the villain. You need to have the Prime Wardens. So, for those of you who don't know what the Prime Wardens are, it is a hero team consisting of 5 heroes, and they are Captain Costmic, the Argent Adept, Fanatic, Haka, there's Haka, and Tempest. Now, the trick here, what makes this complicated, is you actually need to have all of their variants unlocked. So there's Prime Wardens Captain Costmic, there's Prime Wardens Argent Adept, there's here's Prime Wardens Fanatic, here's Prime Wardens Haka, and here's Prime Wardens Tempest. And you can play it on any environment, whatever you choose, except for Rook City and Megalopolis. And the reason for that is because we're going to use those later on in the unlocking process. So the Prime Wards are effectively the defenders against any kind of extraterrestrials. So Progeny is definitely in their wheelhouse. So you can play them on literally any of the environments with the exception, again, of Rook City, seen right here. So can't use Rook City and can't use Megalopolis. Now, my recommendation is to play on the Enclave of the Endlings. Why there? Because pretty much every single card in the environment deck deals damage to heroes. Now, I said that the prerequisite games are, I guess, time-consuming, but they are not complicated. Because as these 5 heroes, the first thing you need to do is you need to lose to Progeny anywhere that is not Megalopolis or Rook City. So literally, I'm not going to play the game for you right now, but all you need to do is click the fight button, and Progeny is very good at dealing a ton of damage to a bunch of people, and then when they get on low HP, he starts punching the lowest health hero for a ton of damage. The Enclave of the Endlings also do a ton of damage to heroes, and you can help it along. Use your own heroes, don't hit Progeny, don't hit the environment, hit each other. The only time you have cause for concern is one card in this environment. I believe its name is, Indestructible or something like that. It's a 35 HP environment card, and whenever anybody deals damage, it's always redirected to him. So if that guy shows up, you can just restart the game. Otherwise, just have at each other. The highest HP character here is Haka, who has 35. You all should be able to, get yourselves killed within a couple of turns. Like, between Tempest and Fanatic, they deal themselves damage, and then they can deal damage to others. Captain Costmic can give other people his constructs so they can deal damage. So this should not be hard. This is actually relatively easy to do. The second of the prerequisite games you need to do actually takes place. Come on, get out of here. Okay, I'm just going to swap it in. The second of these prerequisite games takes place in Rook City. After the Prime Wardens fail to defeat Progeny, leave. Okay, come on, get out of here. Okay, never mind. After No, he doesn't want to go. There we go. After the Prime Wardens fail to defeat Progeny, he ends up on Earth, and you're going to need to play as Expatriette, Setback. Where are you? No, 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 no. Oh gosh, where are my Dark Watch characters? Ah, there she is. Nightmist and Mr. Fixer. There he is. Okay, so again, you need to play as the Dark Watch variant. So you have to have Dark Watch Nightmist, Dark Watch Expatriate, Dark Watch Setback, and Dark Watch Mr. Fixer. Mr. Fixer. Wow, I can't talk. Again, Progeny deals a ton of damage to everybody across the board, and Rook City is actually considered probably the nastiest of all the environments because it lets the villain play additional cards. So these guys will drop like bricks, no problem. And again, you just have them attack each other and help that along. It's hard enough as it is. And then after that, you have the third prerequisite game. And again, if you don't have any of the variants for the Prime Wardens or the Dark Watch, that's actually key is to getting the Freedom 5 variants. You need to have all of these variants unlocked and play them specifically in this game. You can't use the base version. So if you don't have those, I'll probably make a video later on. Just check it out on my YouTube channel. I will have to say, though, hands down, the hardest character to get the variant of is Dark Watch Setback, and I'd argue he's not even that good. But it's nice to have a complete set, and you need him to get to the Freedom 5, which I consider a lot of those cards to be very, very good and very synergistic. But I'll make a video for the Dark Watch and Prime Wardens. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Anyway, after the Dark Watch fails to beat Progeny in Rook City, it's time to call in the A-Team, the Freedom 5. So what you do is you get Legacy, Bunker, Tachyon, Wraith, and Absolute Zero. Order doesn't matter, for the most part. And you have them play Progeny. Again, this has to be non-variant members of the Freedom 5. Okay, you just use their base versions. You can't use any of the others, even though they each have a ton. So just base version. And they all now get to lose on Rook City, which again, Rook City is a devastating environment, and it just causes Progeny to play a ton of cards, and yeah, it's going to be bad. But then, when Progeny heads over to Megalopolis, the same members of the Freedom 5 are going to be... That's not where I wanted. I want this one. Come on, Megalopolis. Are going to be facing off on Progeny, and that is where you are going to be getting your unlock achievements after you've done all those prereqs. So, this is the order I recommend keeping your heroes in: Legacy, Bunker, Tachyon, Wraith, and Absolute Zero. In that order. It's actually the order that they were recruited for the Freedom 5. So, again, story-wise, I think that's, kind of appropriate. To get each character, it requires, slightly different unlock conditions. However, the strategy I'm going to show you right now works for every single one of these unlocks with the exception of Bunker. So, I'm just going to go over it real quick. I'm going to then take you through each of their decks, show you the cards that you want to have out on the field, and then I'll very quickly play a game, and you'll see how it goes. And again, you might get dealt a bad hand, but for the most part, what I found, this strategy does work. And even if your heroes get really, really low on HP, you'll pretty much be able to lock Progeny out and just start looping, and whichever character you're trying to get an unlock for, you'll get that immediately. Another thing to note, though, is as you're playing through these games, you will only ever be able to get one unlock per game. So let's say you meet the unlock conditions for both Bunker and the Wraith in a single game. You're going to get the Bunker variant for that game because he's closer to the front of the order. So order does slightly matter for variants, but again, this strategy, you can pretty much rinse and repeat it. You just need to play 4 games to get everybody, and then Bunker's a special case, but we'll get to him. Anyway, so you've done the prereq games. Prime Wardens have lost to Progeny somewhere. Dark Watch has lost to Progeny in Rook City. Freedom 5 has lost to Progeny in Rook City, and now they come to their home base in Megalopolis. And again, all variants are needed to use. Prime Wardens variants, Dark Watch variants, and then the non-variants of the Freedom 5. So, if you want to get Legacies unlocked, here's what you have to do. Over the course of the game, you need to prevent a total of 20 damage, which, using the method I'm going to show you, that's pretty much what Legacy's job is going to be soaking damage. he needs to prevent more damage than he increases. So, to do this, the key here is to not play Legacy's Inspiring Presence. We're going to show the cards real quick. Inspiring Presence should only ever be played if you need HP, but honestly, I would avoid playing it no matter what match you're in, even if you're not going for the Legacy unlock, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the key here is you want to be able to deal a consistent amount of damage to Progeny over each turn, but you don't want to deal more than 10. And if you use his ability to boost via Inspiring Presence or Galvanize, which increases all damage to all by all allied targets, including Legacy, by 1 until the start of his next turn, you're going to get over that 10 cap, and you're going to kill your strategy. So you don't ever want to use those. The best strategy to do with Legacy is honestly to skip his turn so he draws out as much of his deck as he can until you get the cards you need. And we'll go over that in a second. So Legacy, you just need to prevent 20 damage. If you're only preventing damage and you never Galvanize, you never use Inspiring Presence, you'll never boost more damage than you prevent, which is key. And also, at some point over the course of the game, you need to play Danger Sense, which is very easy because you're going to hit the point where Legacy is not going to have any cards left to play because you're going to have a full hand and you're just going to be picking and choosing which one you want. So dropping Danger Sense, not hard. Next up, we're going to take a look at Bunker. So Bunker actually has a very... It's the only one the strategy won't work for, but I'll go over it real quick right now. So for Bunker, what you need to do is you need to discard each of his mode cards, and there's a bunch of mode cards he has. You have Recharge mode, you have Turret mode, and you have Upgrade mode. And you can see it's an ongoing, and it always says mode. You need to discard these cards twice over the course of the entire game. Now, there are some cards that causes Bunker to discard cards, notably, his Gatling gun. However, Progeny also has a card. I'm going to jump down to villains real quick. Progeny also has a Scion form, which whenever he's dealt damage, that is the Proletariat, that is not Progeny. Progeny. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Boop, boop. Oh, I'm in the hero. Excuse me, sorry about that. Those are team villains. Progeny is right here. So, the card that we're looking at right now for Progeny is Scion of Light. The first time Progeny is dealt damage, each turn one player must discard one card. If you get that out, all you need to do is have Bunker have his mode cards in hand. Every time you hit him for some damage, it's really easy to get that achievement. The other thing that Bunker needs to do is, over the course of the game, he needs to deal 4 different types of damage. And I'm going to jump back up to Bunker real quick. And this is actually kind of tricky for Bunker, which is why he requires a different strategy than everybody else. So Bunker by himself can deal 3 types of damage. External Combustion deals fire damage, and it's the only time he can do fire damage. All of his other cards, Gatling Gun deals projectile damage, Grenade Launcher deals projectile damage, Flat Cannon deals projectile damage. He does a lot of projectile damage. So any of his equipment cards will deal projectile damage. External Combustion is a one-shot, deals fire damage. Make sure he deals somebody fire damage, and that's it. And the third thing is the Omni Cannon, which deals energy damage. Now, you'll notice that's only 3 types of damage, and he needs 4. The 4th type is melee damage, and he doesn't have a card that does melee damage. However, if you look in Megalopolis, there is an environment card, which is... Where are you? No. Is it this one? That is not it. That is the card that is important, though. Hostage situation. Rooftop. I'm looking for Rooftop Combat. No, that's not it. Close Quarters. Here it is. Cramped Quarters Combat. Change the type of all damage to melee. What you need to do is you need to have the environment play this card, and there's 2 copies of it in the deck of 15 cards, so you're going to need to wait a little bit to get it. But once you do, you just need to have Bunker punch Progeny once, making sure that at least some of the damage gets through his DR. And since it's melee damage and all damage is increased by 1, chances are you're going to get that. So it's 4 types of damage and discarding the mode cards. Getting the Bunker unlock, you're actually going to need to do a legit game, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The trick does not work for it, and I'll explain why in a minute. Next up, we're going to do the Wraith. So the Wraith, very standard. To get her unlock, you need to draw 20 cards over the course of the game, which using my trick, extremely easy to do. The next thing you have to have is you need to play the card Trust Fund 3 times, and there's 3 copies of it in the deck, and it's draw 4 cards, then discard 2. That right there is 12 of your draws, so you just have 8 more. Very simple. And at some point in the game, excuse me, you need to play Smoke Bombs, which is a redirect. Now, Smoke Bombs can be used as a baseline for the beginning of this trick I'm going to show you. If not, it just helps out if you're doing the Wraith. But you pretty much get whatever you need. The best card to get her to the 20 card draws, in my opinion, is Infrared Eyepiece. Look at the top 2 cards of the villain deck, put one on top, one on bottom, and then draw a card. The Wraith can draw a ton of cards with this. And if you notice, it's an equipment, it is not limited. So if you have Utility Belt out, and you have 2 copies of Infrared Eyepiece, you can keep doing that. So you can look at the top 2 cards of Progeny's deck, one on top, one on bottom. Look at that same top card, which you already put there, and the next card, and see if that second card is better, top and bottom. That's 2 cards, then she draws for turn. That's 3 cards total. You'll get to 20 in no time. Next up is Tachyon. Tachyon has the most card-intensive play to make. So for Tachyon, she needs to play a total of 10 cards in 1 turn. And then, before the end of the game, her deck needs to run out and she needs to shuffle her deck back together. So, effectively, you need to draw out your deck, and then when there are cards in your graveyard, they need to shuffle back into her library. Not terribly hard to do with the strategy. It's just, again, very time-consuming. The person who has a lot of the everybody draws a card effects is Tachyon, but unfortunately, you're going to want to hold those in your hand. And the last thing with Tachyon is at the end of the game, she needs to be incapacitated. So you do all the prereqs that you need to do with her, play the 10 cards, have her deck cycle, and then you pretty much just start playing her own cards and having her beat herself up, which I think is kind of funny. But the trick for the 10 cards is you don't put any of the cards out on the field early. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, pushing the limits lets you play an additional card on your turn, and it lets you draw an additional card during your draw phase, but it also deals you damage. Normally, you'd put this card out, but you actually want to hold this in hand, because Progeny can destroy a ton of ongoings with a card, and if you don't have the Wraith out to control his deck, there's a good chance that Tachyon's going to lose this, and you're just going to keep searching for another one. It's better to just hold it in your hand and just keep going. The same thing with the HUD Goggles. This is the other card of Tachyon's that will sit out and just not really do anything. It lets you play an additional card, which you need. However, you don't need to play that card early. You can use that as part of your 10 play. So, here's what you need in your hand to play the 10 cards. First thing you need Pushing the Limits. I recommend dropping that as your first card. Then, HUD Goggles. Drop that immediately. That's 2. Next, you need to have all 3 instances of Fleet of Foot, which is each player draws a card, and then you may play a card. You play that, that brings you up to 5. Next up after that, you want to have Lightning Reflexes. So that's going to be 6, and then it lets you play 2 more cards. There are 2 instances of Lightning Reflexes in the game, so of that second play, you're going to play another Lightning Reflexes, which now means you still have 3 plays left thanks to Lightning Reflexes. So again, you play those first 5 cards. Pushing the Limits, HUD Goggles, and Fleet of Foot. Those are your first 5, and you still have just 1 play left. Lightning Reflexes is your 6th card, but it gives you 2 more plays. You use one of those plays to play another Lightning Reflexes, which is your 7th card, and it gives you 2 more plays. And then you can play any of her other cards. Make sure you can actually play the cards, and you won't kill Progeny with them. So stuff like, Quick Insight is draw 3 cards, discard 2. Research Grant, Redirect, anything you want. But that'll give you play 8, 9, and 10. Once you do that, you're golden. She's the most complicated one. It's the only one that you really need to plan ahead for. but very doable in the long run. And finally, there's Absolute Zero. So Absolute Zero, um, not really a difficult one either, but he's the one you actually need to keep track of your damage. So you remember how I was saying earlier you don't want to boost any damage with Legacy? The reason for that is because of Absolute Zero, because the strategy requires you to deal less than 10 damage to Progeny over the course of a turn. And Absolute Zero is going to be doing a ton of damage to him if he is the hero that you have active. So, for Absolute Zero, what you need to do is you need to deal a total of 29 or more damage that is cold damage, and 29 or more damage that is fire damage over the course of the game. And that's pretty much exactly what he does. Please note, if you have out your null point calibration unit, whenever he deals himself cold damage that gives him HP, that does not count as dealing cold damage because it was negated. So it has to be damage that actually gets through. So he's got so many ways of dealing cold damage and fire damage, and again, like his instants, his redirects, you just need to keep track of it, and you need to make sure that he's not, going crazy with it, effectively. The other thing you need to have is he needs to have 6 ongoing cards in play at once. They do not need to be in play at the end of the game, but they need to be in play at once. And if you look here, he's got Thermal Shockwave, that's 1. Sub-Zero Atmosphere, that's 2. Impale, which is 3. Glacial Structure, which is 4. Coolant Blast, which is 5. And Cold Snap, which is 6. He only has 6 different ongoings, but he has 2 copies of each. It doesn't specify that they need to be different in name. However, you should be able to get all of his ongoings out in the deck anyway, and then start playing stuff. Be warned, though, that Impale and Thermal Shockwave. He's got 2 cards that automatically deal damage at the beginning of each of his turns. Yeah, so Cold Snap and Impale. If you do put those on Progeny, you need to make sure that you're not boosting too much damage, because that right there is a constant 3 damage, which is fine. But as Absolute Zero, he can get a ton of cards out that boost cold damage. So it starts off as 3 damage. If you have the Cryo Chamber in play, suddenly that gets increased to 5 damage. If you have his gloves out, focused apparatus or apertures, suddenly that goes up to 7. So if you play any instant then or use a different power, it can get a little crazy at times. But just be aware of that. So now for the part you're all wanting to know, the strategy portion. Just wanted to give a very brief explanation of what's going on. So what is the strategy here? So first off, you're going to be using the environment to your advantage, which is the smart thing. And the card you're going to be using to give you the advantage is Rooftop Combat. It increases all damage by 1, and again, remember I told you need to watch out for Absolute Zero's damage. This is why. And I'll just read it out. When this card enters play, destroy all other environment cards. Now, Megalopolis has a tendency of playing some really nasty environment cards, such as Paparazzi on the Scene, which means you can't use powers, and Hostage Situation, which means you can't play cards. Between these two, it can be pretty bad at times. The rest of the cards, not that big a deal. Again, you need Cramped Quarters Combat for the Bunker achievement, but the rest of them, I mean, just deals a bunch of damage. Players can't draw cards. Some of it can be beneficial, some of it can hit Progeny, but ultimately you don't want that. But if you wait until Rooftop Combat gets played, it's the only environment card you have to deal with. It increases all damage by 1, so you just need to watch out for how much damage you do. The reason for that is because when hero targets deal non-hero targets cards 10 or more damage in a single round since the card entered play, destroy this card. So what that means is when the environment turn goes, from the time the environment turn starts to ends to the start of the next environment turn, you can't deal Progeny more than 10 damage. Which is why you really need to keep your eyes on how much damage is actually being thrown around. So never use any of Legacy's buffing effects. No Inspiring Presence, no Galvanize, because you're more likely to inadvertently hit that 10 damage cap and make this go away, and then your game gets a whole lot harder. but Rooftop Combat is the card that you're going to be waiting for. And again, there's only one of it in the deck. It might be card 15, but you should be able to last that long. Next up, the other major card that you need to pay attention to is in Legacy's deck. Now, the thing I was going to point out here is Legacy is the only hero that is guaranteed to survive in this setup. Every other hero, you want to knock down their HP as quickly as humanly possible. So, the card here we're going to be looking at is Takedown, which is right here. Villain cards cannot be played. This is key. At the end of your turn, the villain target with the highest HP deals Legacy 2 energy damage. At the start of your turn, destroy this card. So that is a one-turn, villains can't play cards. And that can be really useful. However, using this method I'm going to show you, we are going to abuse this card and make it so Progeny never gets a turn, never gets damage, and he's just using his base power, which is to deal radiant damage to all the heroes in play. And we're going to negate that, getting Legacy his achievement. And how do we do that? Next evolution, Legacy is immune to a damage type of your choice until the start of your next turn. This is the card you want Legacy to have out. If you get out the Legacy ring and can play another power, that's fine. Never use Galvanize. Whenever you use Next Evolution, you're always going to want to select Radiant damage because that is the only type of damage that Progeny deals in his base forms. And we'll look over that in a second. Now, why is that important? If he's hitting, Legacy, Legacy is immune to that damage, but no one else is, right? Well, that's true, but Legacy also has this wonderful card called Lead from the Front. Whenever a hero target would be dealt damage by a villain card, you may redirect that damage to Legacy. So, to get this strategy to work, you need to have Lead from the Front, Next Evolution, and Takedown in Legacy's hands. So pretty much we're just going to be fishing for those cards until we get there. And the rest of the game is pretty much a stall tactic. And how are we going to do stall tactics? Well, we want to wait for the environment to give us Rooftop Combat. So until that card pops out, we're literally just going to be making it so Progeny can't deal us damage. How do we do that? Well, Tachyon and the Wraith have cards that negate damage. So with Tachyon, we're going to be holding on to her Hypersonic Assaults and Synaptic Interruptions, which keeps her alive, but no one else. But Hypersonic Assault, if she can get that damage through to hit Progeny, if he doesn't have any DR up, any damage he deals to anybody over the course of the next turn is negated. He just can't deal damage. And since there are no minions in his deck, it doesn't really matter because he's the only source of damage, so no one else can get hit. Also, with the Wraith, you have Throat Jab, which is going to be shown right here. Throat Jab, 2 melee damage, and the person dealt damage this way can't deal damage until the start of your next turn. That is great. So between the two of those, there are 5 instances of negating damage. Also, for the early game, the 2 cards that the Wraith really wants to play is you want to play Infrared Eyepiece. That way you can stack Progeny's deck to make all the really bad cards that destroy all equipment or all ongoings, make those go away, and make sure he doesn't get any Scion cards that are absolutely brutal. So you want to get probably 2 of those out. Utility Belt helps. The other card which is helpful to have out is Smoke Bombs in case Legacy doesn't have Lead from the Front out. It reduces damage, and it kind of like makes everybody, on par, so the lowest health hero will never take damage, so everybody survives a little bit more. The thing is, though, you don't really want to survive in the long run, and I'll get to that in a second. The other card that the Wraith really wants to play early game is Stun Bolt. If Progeny does not have the card that makes all of his damage irreducible, this is invaluable because it reduces all of his damage by 1. And since he hits everybody with almost every single one of his effects, if you can get 2 of these out, reduce it all by 2, he might get 1 or 2 damage to everybody, but it's not 4 or 5 damage per hero per turn, which is brutal. Anyway, that's the generic strategy. But you're probably looking at me and saying, well, Izzy, that doesn't really give us a good method on how to beat him. Those are useful cards to have out and in play, but that doesn't really, give us a, good strategy. Well, true enough. The key to beating Progeny, as I'm loading this up, is actually found in the heroes themselves. So again, the trick is you want to be able to play Takedown from Legacy every turn, and as you do that, you want to make, which will prevent Progeny from playing cards, and once Rooftop Combat comes out, the environment will no longer be able to play cards. But the thing is, Takedown gets destroyed every turn, so there's no real way to guarantee that you're going to get that, right? Wrong! So, as I said earlier, Legacy, we're going to use them, but there's a key element to all these heroes, which is their flip side, which is their incapacitated side. So if you look at Legacy, one hero may use a power, one player may draw a card. Until the start of your next turn, reduce damage dealt by environment cards by 2. So, the most useful card here is either drawing a card or using a power. However, we need Legacy to survive because he has the cards that shut Progeny down. So Legacy is never going to die. However, the rest of the team is incredibly squishy, and we can afford to lose 3 of them. So if you're going for the Tachyon variant, keep Legacy and Tachyon alive and have Bunker, Wraith, and Absolute Zero die. If you want to get the Wraith variant, have Bunker, Tachyon, and Absolute Zero die, and keep Wraith and Legacy alive. Absolute Zero, Bunker, Tachyon, and Wraith, let them kick it. Legacy and Absolute Zero, only one's left. Again, for the Bunker variant, it's a little bit different because it's better to not shut Progeny down because you want to be able to hit him, and you want close combat quarters to be played so he can get in that melee damage. But once you get in the melee damage and you've discarded enough mode cards, you can set up this strategy and it makes Progeny easy. So, let's take a look real quick. Bunker. His incapacitabilities. One player may play a card. That is incredibly useful. It lets Legacy play Takedown when it's not his turn, which means that Legacy won't take that 2 energy damage from the villain. So Takedown gets played for free, and it's awesome. Select a hero, reduce the next damage dealt to that hero by 2. Not useful in this case. We don't really care about that. And the most important card in here is put a card from the player's trash into their hand. This is key. So at the start of Legacy's turn, Takedown is destroyed. Legacy goes through the rest of his turn as per normal. Bunker gets up. Bunker pulls a card from the player's trash and puts it into their hand. He puts Takedown into Legacy's hand. Well, it's in Legacy's hand. How does that help us? Well, let's look at Tachyon's capacity abilities. One player may play a card now, one player may draw a card, put a card from a player's trash into their hand. Tachyon has the trifecta of amazing abilities. The play a card, so if you got the card back in trash from Bunker, you can play it with Tachyon. If Bunker is the hero you're going for and you have, Tachyon, Wraith, and Absolute Zero is dead, you use Tachyon's ability to get Takedown back from the trash and put it into Legacy's hand. Alternately, if he has a copy of it in his hand already, you can either have him play it or you can have him draw an extra card. Tachyon is just good to have incapacitated, which is why I actually recommend you do her unlock achievement first. The Wraith, what's her incapacitated abilities? Well, if you guessed, one player may play a card now. So, if you can't play it with Tachyon, and Bunker is the one who got the card Takedown back from the trash, you play it with the Wraith. One hero regains 2 HP and destroy an ongoing. The destroy an ongoing can be very useful, especially if Progeny has ongoings out that are not the Scions. His ongoings are very nasty, and normally you want to have those taken out before any of your heroes get incapacitated, but by all the same token, you can just have the Wraith deal with it. Then last, Absolute Zero. Unfortunately, Absolute Zero is arguably the worst of the incapacitated abilities for this group. One hero may use a power. It's okay. Select a hero, increase the next damage dealt by that hero by 2. You never want to use that because then it'll get rid of Rooftop Combat. And destroy a target with 1 HP. Ultimately, Absolute Zero is kind of the most lackluster of the 5 of them. But it's okay because between Bunker, Tachyon, and the Wraith, you only need 2 of them to get Takedown back from the trash and put into Legacy's hand, which both Bunker and Tachyon can do, and then have him play it when it's not his turn and put it on the field, which both Tachyon and the Wraith can do. So no matter what combination you have here, Takedown will always get played when it's not Legacy's turn and prevent Progeny from doing something. And since it's not played on his turn, Legacy will never take the damage. So, I'm going to just start a game up real quick. And again, I might get a little screwed up here. But key is to just wait for Rooftop Combat to get out and to go. And again, Progeny is going to deal us a ton of damage. So... Wait, what? Well, that's game.